You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. I couldn't remember if Doyle had his keys or not, so I had to run out and check the door and make sure that it was unlocked. And Doyle had just driven up, so while I don't know if he has his keys or not, I'm kind of out of breath because I had to make that real quick there and real back. And it's not right in front of my nose, folks, so... Welcome once again to the Hour of the Time. I was very surprised at the reception of last night's broadcast. You see, when I opened the phones, I really expected some raving lunatics to just really not have understood the whole purpose for the thing and just really go off the deep end. And it didn't happen. I was also expecting today some phone calls taking me to task for last night's broadcast, and that did not happen either. Instead, I got about 40 calls today, all congratulating me on last night's broadcast and thanking me for having done it. Not because they believed any of the things that were put forth, but because it really made them think, and that was the whole purpose of the whole thing, was to inspire the audience to stop blindly believing what they're told, not just about religion, but about anything, and start checking it out. My goodness, I had Christians call me today who thought they were Christians all their life, and who had just blindly been believing and then taking what they heard from the pulpit and reading their Bible, and where what they heard conflicted with the Bible, they would in some way rationalize the Bible to come out to say what the preacher had said, instead of understanding and believing what was written in the Bible. So anyway, it worked out really well, and I was very pleased with it. Tonight we're going to do something along those same lines, only it's going to be sort of a debate. And the debate is going to take place between the members of the listening audience. I'm going to feign ignorance tonight. And so we're going to listen to something for a little bit. Then I'm going to open the phones, and then the members of the audience will debate the subject. And any of you who want to call in about anything else, forget it. The minute you bring up any other subject than the subject that is on the agenda tonight, I'm going to have to hang up on you. So be prepared to listen carefully, understand what the subject of tonight's broadcast is, because that is the only subject that I will allow to be discussed, period. If you want to discuss something else, save it for another night, or go discuss it with somebody down the block. Okay? We're going to talk about the theory of evolution tonight. The Big Bang Theory, the theory of evolution, Darwinism, as aligned against creationism, or as the religionists, if there are such a thing, propose, God created the heavens and the earth, mankind, all of the animals, the stars, the oceans, everything in 7 days. So you, the listening audience, are going to take part in this debate. I am going to be the moderator. And I am going to ask questions when I believe that questions need to be asked of whoever is calling to participate in the debate, so that we can pull out the truth from all of this, whatever the truth may be, and we may not even get close to it. But it's going to be fun trying. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I want everyone in the listening audience who participates in this debate to stick as close to science, to facts, to things that can be proven as is humanly possible. And I know some of you will get a little emotional, and you'll try to go off on some tangent somewhere, and I will try to gently pull you back. As long as you allow yourself to be gently pulled back into the realm of fact and science, I will let you continue. And if you absolutely refuse, we'll go on to another caller. Okay? Now, this is a very important subject because it divides the world. And it is, I believe, important in relationship to what is planned for the world. So I want you all to understand the terms of tonight's broadcast. If you call about anything else, I will just very simply hang up on you just as quickly as I discover what tangent it is that you want to go off on, because it's not going to be allowed. Okay? And there's somebody calling already. Let's see what tangent this is going to be about. Good evening, you're on the air.
Bill?
Yes?
The line dropped.
The line dropped?
Yes.
How did that happen?
I have no idea. I went to pot you up at the top of the hour, and it was dial tone.
Well, let's do it again then. Maybe it doesn't like this phone line.
I guess not. Nothing happened here. I seized it as I always do. It's just that it dropped.
Did you make any kind of announcement? Better tell the listening audience.
Yes, I did. I got on and I told them we're just having a slight technical problem. I'm playing music now.
Okay, let me call you again.
Okay. You can...
Well, we're calling in again to link up with the... Okay. Give you 30 seconds. Okay. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I'm going to seize the line right now, though. Okay. Anytime. Okay. Well, now we're supposed to count to 30, and then we should be on the air at WBCQ. I hope. So we'll find out exactly what's going on as the second hand ticks around. And I think what I'm going to do is just start us over again here, just as if nothing happened. For those of you listening in the Round Valley, just, pretend like you didn't hear anything, okay? And we'll just start this all over again right now. You're listening to The Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Ladies and gentlemen, don't ask me what happened. I don't know, and WBCQ doesn't know. We were linked, and then we weren't. And so we're getting a 10-minute late start. I've already explained the parameters of tonight's broadcast, and those listening here in Arizona already know it. So, you guys can go get a snack and something to drink and some pen and paper while I explain it to our international audience around the world. Tonight's broadcast, folks, is going to be on the theory of evolution aligned against creationism. It's going to be a debate which will take place between the members of the listening audience. I will feign ignorance tonight. And who knows, I might learn an awful lot tonight. Now, it doesn't matter if either side proves or disproves anything. What matters is that we have a debate, and that the debate is based upon fact, keeping it as close to real science as is humanly possible. You can either support your position or you can't. And you can either support it with science or you cannot. And for those of you who believe that you can't support creationism with science, you're wrong. It not only can be done, but that's your best argument. For those of you who believe you have all the scientific fact in the world on your side because you believe in the theory of evolution, you may find that you're wrong. So, and the reason I'm saying this is because that is the opinion of most people, is that the theory of evolution is scientific fact. Is it? And the theory of most people, or the belief of most people, is that creationism cannot be supported by scientific fact. Is that true? We're going to find out tonight. I am going to be the moderator. And I'm going to play a short tape. I'm not going to play the whole tape because this guy goes into some realms that I don't like to go to. I don't believe in it, for one thing. But he starts off with a pretty convincing argument. And I want you to hear that portion, his argument, and then we'll go for there. If you believe in the theory of evolution, we want to hear from you. We want you to argue why you believe it with scientific fact. If you believe in creationism, we want to hear from you. And we want you to argue your side of this debate with scientific fact. Don't call up and say what the Bible says. That's not scientific fact. If the Bible is true, and if the laws of nature are God's laws, you should be able to prove your point by arguing scientific facts. Now, bear in mind that not all things that are accepted as fact in science are really fact at all, and if that's true, you should be able to prove that also. And you're going to hear a little bit of that, because what you're going to hear now is extremely interesting, and I'm not going to tell you whether it's true or false. I'm not going to tell you anything tonight. I am going to be the moderator. I will attempt to keep the debate on track. If you begin to go off into flights of fancy or emotionalism or begin to get all upset or something, then I'm going to try to gently pull you back, and if I can, I'll let you continue. If not, then we'll have to go to the next caller. Okay? And bear in mind that it should be interesting. It should open up realms of thought that have not occurred to many of us before. And it should be challenging. One thing that may occur is that you may find that you believe either in the theory of evolution or creationism, and you don't know why, and you have absolutely no facts to argue your side of the debate, pro or con. And if that occurs with a great majority of the audience, we may find ourselves without a broadcast. And if that's what happens, ladies and gentlemen, then everybody listening to this broadcast, if that's what happens, then everybody listening to this broadcast, I'm going to have to say, is building a house on sand. If you can't support your belief with fact, with scientific fact in this case, because both sides of this can be argued with scientific fact and nothing else. And that's the truth. If you cannot call up and present an argument based upon scientific fact, then it means you built your house on sand, and you'd better re-examine your entire structure of belief regarding this subject, no matter which side you are on. Okay? So the purpose of this broadcast is not to disprove the theory of evolution. It's not to disprove creationism. It is to challenge the listening audience to back up your case with fact. Scientific fact. See if you can make your point. See if you can prove your side of the debate. It's going to be extremely interesting, I think. And so all of you run around. You may want to jot some things down because some of the callers may come up with some points that just may surprise everybody. And I hope that happens. I really hope it happens. And I think it will, if I know this audience. And I think I did. So I'm going to play some music now. You all run around and get you something to drink and something to snack on. And make sure you have pen and paper. And when I come back, after this music, we're going to play a portion of a tape, and then we're going to open the phones. And I'd like you all to make your points as quickly as possible, because I want to get as many calls in as possible for this debate. And we're already 10 minutes behind schedule. And oh, by the way, I want to thank all of you who enjoyed last night's broadcast. I had about 40 or 50 calls today, all thanking me and telling me what a wonderful broadcast it was. And it surprised me because I thought that I would be really attacked over that broadcast rather than have it have been appreciated as it apparently was. So thank you very much. Be prepared when we come back to listen very carefully to the tape that I'm going to play, and that will start our debate.
Willow, weep for me. Willow, weep for me. Bend your branches green along the stream that runs to sea. Listen to my plea. Listen, willow, and weep for me. Gone my lover's dream, lovely summer's dream. Gone and left me here to weep my tears into the stream. Sad as I can be, hear me, willow, and weep for me. Whisper to the wind and say that love has sinned. Leave my heart a-breaking and making a moan. Murmur to the night to hide her starry light, so none will find me sighing and crying all alone. Weeping willow tree, weeping sympathy, bend your branches down along the ground and cover me. When the shadows fall, bend, oh willow, and weep for me.
with enough of that weeping willow tree stuff. I just can't get into that weeping willow tree. As we've been doing lately, I'm just letting the shuffle come up on out of the 200 CDs that we have loaded into this CD carrier here. So, okay, folks, sit back, relax, and listen. And I mean listen very, very carefully. Now, I don't know whether what you're going to hear is right or wrong, but it's going to lay a foundation of thought that may spark the rest of the evening's debate. And remember, it's you, the members of the listening audience, who are going to participate in this debate, not me. I am going to moderate it, ask pertinent questions when I believe it's necessary, and try to keep it on track, on fact, and not flights of emotion or religious, what do you call it? Ranting, I guess, which is where some people like to go, and we're not going to allow that. So when it happens, I'll try to pull you back gently. If you refuse, then we'll go on to the next caller. Okay, so let's keep it friendly, and let's keep it fun if we can, and let's try to learn something tonight, and let's try to spark intellectual thinking, which is the whole reason for this broadcast, has been from day one.
I was on the airplane years ago flying from Dallas to San Francisco, the land of the fruits and the flakes, and I happened to sit next, actually I wasn't flying, the plane was flying, I was just sitting, but I happened to sit next to a professor from Berkeley University. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of Berkeley University, but Berkeley is not a Bible college by any stretch of the imagination. And this professor and I were sitting next to each other for 4 hours as we flew from Dallas to San Francisco. And we got talking inevitably about evolution and creation. He said he believes in evolution. I said, yes, sir, I'm sure of that. You have to teach at Berkeley. That's one of the prerequisites. I said, tell me, how did the world get here? He said, well, Mr. Hovind, about 20 billion years ago, all the dust in space started drawing together into this little tiny dot. And it was spinning real fast, and it exploded. It's the Big Bang Theory. That's the way it's taught in the textbooks. Look at this. Here's Prentice Hall, General Science, 1992. Notice what this says. You got to read this carefully. This blew my mind when I saw this. I had to photograph the page and show you. 18 to 20 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. I thought, now wait a minute. All the matter in the universe, all the stars, all the planets, the sun, the earth, all the people were squeezed into a dot smaller than a period on the page? Folks, that's one crowded dot. That was jam-packed in there. I'm telling you what, you couldn't have got that thing any more packed. That's what they're teaching the kids these days. And the professor, he told me that. He's a professor at Berkeley. He believes it. He said it was spinning faster and faster, just like it says here, Prentice Hall, General Science. It spun faster and faster. Finally, it exploded. Boom! The Big Bang. And the professor said, that's the way we got here. I said, sir, could I ask you a couple questions, please? He said, sure, go ahead. We got nothing but time, 4 hours sitting on the airplane. I said, question number one, where did matter come from? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, you told me that all this dust in space started drawing together. Where did the dust come from? Who made the dust? He said, well, that's a good question, and we don't know that one for sure. I said, okay, no problem. Maybe you know this one. You said all this dust started getting together. What made it get together? He said, gravity. All particles have an attraction for each other. I said, sir, I understand that. I teach physics. I know about the inverse square law, particle attraction, acceleration due to gravity. That's the stuff I teach. But that doesn't explain the basic fundamental question, where did gravity come from? Who made gravity? Who made the dust? Who made the laws of gravity, centrifugal force, inertia, the laws that govern this universe? Who wrote the law book? He said, I don't know. I said, okay, no problem, no problem. He said it was all drawing together, squeezing into this little bitty dot, spinning real fast, and it exploded. I said, sir, doesn't it require energy to make something move? He said, well, of course. I said, well, where did the energy come from for all this dust to move and to spin and to explode? Who bought the gas to run this machine anyway? Where did the energy come from? He said, well, that's a good question. He said, I don't know. I said, okay, no problem, no problem. You're 0 for 3 so far, but let's try one more. You said it was all spinning around and it exploded, and the pieces that flew off cooled down to become the suns, galaxies, moons, stars, etc. Is that right? He said, that's it. You got it. I said, can I ask you another question, sir? He was getting a little reluctant to take questions by this time, but he said, sure, go ahead. I said, does Berkeley University, where you teach, have a merry-go-round? You kids know what a merry-go-round is, don't you? You go round and round till you puke. You've been on one of those before? He said, no, we don't have a merry-go-round at Berkeley. I said, well, that's unfortunate because you can learn some neat things about science from a merry-go-round. For instance, if you put 6 fourth graders on the merry-go-round, how many fourth graders do we have here? Are they in here? Fourth grade. Hey, I spent the best 6 years of my life in fourth grade. I loved it. We'll use fourth graders for this experiment because they're pretty tough and they're brave and they're expendable. So we're going to put 6 fourth graders on the merry-go-round. Make sure that at least one of them does not know what's going on. And if you're using fourth graders, most of them qualify. All right? But we're going to make sure at least one does not know what's going on. 5 of them are going to have a secret code word. They're going to get on the merry-go-round. We're going to get it spinning pretty fast. And one of the 5 is going to say, "Oh boy, isn't this fun?" And as soon as he says fun, those 5 run to the middle of the merry-go-round. So all you got to do, pull yourself in and stand in the middle. As soon as you do that, the merry-go-round will start going about 4 or 5 times faster, all by itself with nobody else touching it. You concentrate the mass in the middle, and it'll spin faster, leaving the 6th kid with a problem. I was in Longview, just north of Longview, Texas, about a year ago, I guess, and I was speaking at this church, and I told that story, and that night, a little girl came in, about 8 years old, you know. She came into church, and she had Band-Aids all over her elbows and all over her knees. I said, "What happened?" She said, "I was on the merry-go-round, and it started going real fast all by itself, and I fell off." I said, "Oh, I wonder how that happened." But I told the Berkeley professor, I said, if you put 6 kids on the merry-go-round and get the high school football team out there to get it spinning as fast as it'll go. Now, we're going to spin the merry-go-round clockwise for this experiment. Now, if you have a digital watch, you may not know what clockwise means. You can see me afterwards. I'll explain that to you. But we're going to spin the merry-go-round clockwise. It does not mean blink, blink, blink. No. Anyway, we're going to spin it around clockwise with the football team pushing it as fast as they can get it going. They're going to start off, and the kids are going to go through 4 very distinct phases every time. It works. The fourth graders will be on there. They'll be screaming and yelling, "Oh, boy, let's go. Faster, faster. You win." And you get up around 20 or 30 miles an hour. They enter phase 2. Phase 2 is the silent stage where they stop screaming and they just concentrate on trying to hang on for dear life. Keep going faster and faster and faster. You get up around 40 or 50 miles an hour, they're going to enter phase 3. Phase 3 is where they start screaming again. But now they're screaming, "Stop, stop, slow down. Don't stop. Keep going faster and faster." Somewhere between 80 and 100 miles an hour, they will enter phase 4. Phase 4 is where the kids begin to fly off the merry-go-round. Now, you need to watch carefully and videotape this and play it back frame by frame. You'll notice an interesting phenomena of science. If the merry-go-round is going clockwise, when the kid flies off, he will be spinning clockwise until he encounters a little resistance like a tree or a pole or the parking lot. He will be going the same direction as the merry-go-round. It always happens. It's called, in science, the law of the conservation of angular momentum, which means if a spinning object explodes, the pieces that fly off spin the same direction. And the Berkeley professor said, "Oh, yes, Mr. Hovind, I'm familiar with the conservation of angular momentum principle." I said, "Well, good. If you're familiar with that, if the whole universe started from a big bang, would you explain something to me? Would you explain why all 9 of our planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all 9 planets go around the sun counterclockwise? All 9 of them travel counterclockwise viewed from the North Star, and yet the sun spins clockwise. The sun spins backwards. Would you explain that to me with your Big Bang Theory, please?" He said, "Well, that's interesting." I said, "Sir, that's a whole lot more than interesting. That's devastating. It couldn't have come from a Big Bang. The sun is spinning backwards." He said, "Well, I don't know how it started then." I said, "Okay, no problem. Maybe you could explain this. These planets are not only going around the sun, they're also spinning around themselves. Some turning faster than others, but they're all spinning. However, 7 of the planets, like Earth, spin counterclockwise viewed from their North Pole. 2 of them, Venus and Uranus, spin backwards." I said, "Sir, how did 2 planets get going backwards? Maybe even Pluto spinning backwards, we're not sure." I said, "How did that happen?" He said, "Well, that's interesting." He said, "I don't know." I said, "Okay, no problem. I said, "Maybe you could explain this. Some of the planets have moons going around them. There are 60 known moons in the solar system now. Mercury doesn't have any, Venus doesn't have any, Earth only has 1. Does anybody know the name of ours?" Moon. Okay? It's called Moon. That's a smart crowd you got here, brother. Out of the 60 known moons in our solar system, at least 11 of them are spinning backwards. 4 of them are traveling backwards around their planet. They're going opposite way. I said to the Berkeley professor, "Sir, how did it happen? I would like a logical, rational, non-emotional, scientific, non-religious answer. How did it happen?" He said, "I don't have a good answer." He said, "How do you think it happened?" I said, "It's very simple to me. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And God must have done it that way on purpose just to make the Big Bang Theory look stupid."
And so that is the kickoff to the debate. Now, like I told you before, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether all of that was right or wrong, or at least I'm going to pretend that I don't. And so you, the members of the audience, are now challenged to participate in a great debate. And you are to call in, state which side of this debate you are on, and then give the scientific facts to support your side of the debate. We should have, according to statistics nowadays, we should end up with more callers from people who believe in the theory of evolution than people who believe in creationism if you believe the polls and the statistics that abound. And after all of the years that the theory of evolution has been taught in schools, and all of the years that creationism has been banned from schools, it should come out about that way. But no matter which side of the debate you are on, we want to hear from you. I'm going to moderate the debate. I'm going to keep it on track. I'm going to ask questions when I believe that the questions are called for, and you're going to support your side of the debate. If after a reasonable period of time we find that neither side can support their contention with any scientific facts whatsoever, or very few, then guess what that means, folks? It means you're all full of crap, is what it means. So get it together. And if you believe one way or the other, call in. The number's 520-333-4578. Remember, I'm the moderator. I'm not going to take sides in this. And I don't care which side you're on. You got nothing to fear from me. All I'm going to do is keep the debate on track, keep it from going off into emotional and strange areas, and keep it to fact and science, if we can possibly do that, or as close as humanly possible. Good evening. You're on the air.
Well, good evening, Bill. How am I coming through?
Good.
My name is Jeff, and I'd like to help define the term. You keep referring to it as the theory of evolution, and you're jumping a couple of steps. In the search for scientific knowledge, you begin with an idea, you elevate that to a hypothesis, then a theory, and you eventually end up with a fact. I would prefer that it's called the hypothesis of evolution, so that we don't accidentally assume facts that aren't in evidence.
We're not admitting that there are any facts and evidence. In fact, I agree with what you say, except the hypothesis is based upon the idea. The theory always must be based upon some fact, and the people who believe in the theory of evolution claim that it is based upon scientific fact. Therefore, it is called and accepted in academic circles as the theory of evolution. It has never been claimed as fact, however.
Well, yes, but one important step is being missed. Somebody starts with an idea. A hypothesis is an educated guess. It's not supported by any factual evidence whatsoever.
That's true.
And then, once factual evidence is accumulated, then we start attributing it to being a theory.
So you want to start the debate assuming that both sides are no more than the hypothesis.
Exactly. We're all people right from the beginning.
Okay, then let's do that.
All right. Thank you. Should I hang up?
No, are you on one side or the other?
Well, I definitely believe in evolution. I mean, excuse me. Whoa. Excuse me, Bill. No. Once you look at African lungfish, once you explore an anglerfish, once you examine the mysteries of the human eye, there's no conceivable way evolution can explain away any of that.
Okay. Do you have any scientific fact upon which you can base your side of the argument?
Oh, numerous, multitude facts.
Well, give us one or two or three or something, but give us something here to start this debate on.
Let's talk about the cones and the dots of the human eyeball and how come objects become visible to us. If evolution was to create the human eye, what with an adjustable focusing lens, the optic nerve, everything else that's there, it's ridiculous to assume that excuse me, I'm going to ramble on, and I shouldn't. And I know you're going to get a lot of callers. I just wanted to get my 2 cents worth.
Well, I could barely hear you, and we'll go on to the next caller.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for calling. And we'll accept your definition. We'll start as both sides being a hypothesis. And you, in the listening audience, are going to establish whether there is any fact to impel either side of the argument into the realm of theory, which must be based upon fact. And so if you support creationism or the theory of our evolution, both of them starting off tonight as hypotheses, then that's fine. And by the way, your argument was not based upon any fact. It was based upon your belief that the cones in the eyes and the focusing ability of the human eye could not possibly result from evolution, but your contention is not based upon any science whatsoever. It's just strictly your opinion or your belief. 520-333-4578 is the number. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Bill. It's Alan.
Hello, Alan.
The single biggest smoking gun piece of evidence for a Big Bang theory of the creation of our observable universe, at least in this dimensional plane, is something known as the microwave background radiation. It's kind of like the aftermath, the burning glow, the afterglow of that event that might have happened 10 to 15 billion years ago. It's measurable. It was discovered in the late 50s by a group of Bell Telephone researchers in Homedale, New Jersey. They were using this huge horn antenna, and wherever they pointed it in the sky, they detected this very, very, very faint microwave background radiation. And there was a theoretical prediction that if the universe was created so many billions of years ago in one big fat flash, that as it cooled down and matter condensed and formed galaxies and star systems and planets and us, that as it cooled, that radiation, and as it expanded, it would cool. That radiation would, by 15 billion years or so, instead of being 2 or 3 million degrees, it would be only 3 degrees, which puts it in the microwave band. So that's my piece of scientific fact insofar as a universe, one theory that at least our observable universe starting coming in with a bang.
Okay, does that argument support evolution or creationism? Or do you know?
Well, I mean,
or could it support both?
You know, it's interesting because, science has always been my thing. And, the thing about evolution is that we as humans and we as people kind of get off the beaten path with, is we look at everything around us and we kind of base it in the time scale of lifetimes. If you take a group of molecules that kind of have an affinity to getting together and forming complex amino acids and eventually complex tissues and single-celled organisms and things like that, it's easy to say that there's a divine presence responsible for that, but the thing is, given enough time, it's possible. I mean, it's theoretically possible, because we're talking about time scales not in human lifetime. We're talking about time scales in millions and millions to billions of years. You know, most of us can just think of maybe 10 or 20 years, and by the time 30 years gets by, we're all getting a little foggy.
You could say that again. I said you could say that again.
Right. To conceive of things happening within like a period of 1 million years is almost impossible for the human mind to conceive. And then multiply that by 1,000, and you've got 1 billion. And you know, you're getting into inconceivable reasonable number. So yeah, I think evolution makes sense. Also, I can hold the argument that if you look at the observable universe in itself as something that is not only supporting, our life on this planet Earth, but might have other forms of life teeming within it. And then, of course, if you get into a spiritual thing and a spirituality thing and an interdimensional thing where, thought of existence can go beyond the biological state, beyond just a biological engine. I think it would be closed-minded for even the most advanced scientific mind to say, well, it's really possible that there is some divine influence or central nucleus of thought or consciousness governing the way life progresses, not only on our little planet Earth, but in the universe as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that jumps into UFOs, that jumps into other evolutionary life forms that could even
all kinds of things that we don't even want to touch tonight.
Right. The thing is, Bill, though, if you accept evolution, even if you accept evolution with divine providence, you've got to look at it with a possibility that, take the evolution of this planet, take the supposedly most advanced life form on this planet, which are human beings, supposedly. Add 1 million years to our evolution, and what will you get?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
The supreme jellyfish, maybe. Floating in space.
So evolution seems to follow an arrow that goes in one direction.
If it's true.
If it's true. So I generally try to, I look at it both ways, because my consciousness and my consciousness as a person has a hard time even visualizing, if the universe started as a singularity, how many biological evolutionary steps were necessary to create the human eye, or the eye of a great whale or something like that. I mean, how many?
Well, let's go back to the tape for just a second, and then we want to go on to the next caller. What do you have to say about the argument that he put forth that if there was, in fact, the beginning of the universe and everything that was a Big Bang, that the orbits and the direction of the orbits and the spinning of the planets in one way or another, and the moons around the planets and the moons on their axis, absolutely contradicts the way the science said that it would have to happen if, in fact, it began with the Big Bang. Everything in the universe would have to be spinning in the same direction.
Well, the thing is, that I don't think that's a problem, because the theory is, when the Big Bang happened, there were anomalies in it. In other words, the universe is not, the observable universe is not a perfectly smooth place. It's kind of like when you wade in water and spin things around. You might get water swirls going one way, water swirls going the other way.
Oh, can't happen. Can't happen.
Pardon me?
Can't happen. If you get swirls in the northern hemisphere, they're going to go in one direction. If you get them in the southern hemisphere, they're going to go in another direction, in the opposite direction, no matter how you try to create those swirls, because of the Coriolis force of the spinning of the Earth.
Coriolis force is not as strong as, say, your hand moving the water and creating and making it go in one direction. In other words, you're putting energy into that system. You're putting, not the energy of the Earth's rotation. I know we're talking about the Coriolis effect. But in other words, you're getting in the water and you're moving your hand in one direction and you're creating little swirls in the water. And you're putting energy into that system. Now, when a planetary system condenses, there are probably, now again, this is theory, but there are probably all different kinds of eddies and motions and anomalies, because even the solar system isn't a perfect geometric system. I mean, the orbits are inclined, they're elliptical. There was a time when scientists and men of wisdom thought it was, but it's not. It's not perfect.
But it does, when examined, according to what we know in the law of physics, conform to those laws perfectly. But how did it get that way is the question. If the law of physics say that if there was a Big Bang, they all have to fly out of that Big Bang spinning in the same direction than the original matter was spinning in the object that exploded.
Okay, I'm trying to explain that. The theory of the Big Bang has modified within the last decade. The theory now is that there was a Big Bang, but it was not a perfectly symmetrical one, meaning that there were anomalies in it. It was not perfect.
Do you think that this is an attempt to actually explain why things are the way they are, or an attempt to explain away the fault that people who criticize the theory and make the theory more valid? Or do you think?
No, I think it's to explain the way things are.
Okay.
Actually, as more information from there are satellites that have been put up to measure the microwave background radiation, and they found anomalies in it.
Okay.
They found that it's not completely perfectly uniform everywhere you point a radio telescope in the sky.
Yeah.
Meaning that the Big Bang was not a perfectly symmetrical thing. There's a theory that states if the Big Bang was perfectly symmetrical and perfect in every way, and energy just went out and dissipated, there might not be a universe that we see. In other words, there might have not been a condensation of space into matter as we know it today. It just might have radiated out and dissipated, and that's the end of it. No matter, no people, no nothing. That one theory holds that the Big Bang happened, but because it was not perfect, because there were lumps in it, it was lumpy. Because of that,
like my gravy.
Space condensed into matter. Matter condensed upon itself, fell upon itself into gravity. The first theoretical particles were not even, atoms as we know it. They were just quarks and just little packets of energy that finally got together to form like the first protons and neutrons and things like that.
Yeah, and now we're getting into realms that exist only in the minds of mathematicians. Protons
and neutrons and electrons, those are measurable particles.
Well, I was specifically referring to quarks.
Well, quarks
could only be proven mathematically on a blackboard and have never been physically proven to exist like a proton and neutron can be.
Well, they're
this I have it on good authority.
Part of the theoretical makeup of the fundamental particles that we know, which are protons and neutrons and electrons, which if you smash them and break them up, they break down into smaller bits of packets of energy. At least that's the theory, and some of it's observable. When they put them in linear accelerators and cyclotrons and bash them into each other, they break down into constituent parts. But what I'm saying is that the universe, the more they look at it, both with satellites, both with telescopes, the more they observe and get information, like from the Hubble Space Telescope, the more they see that the universe is not a perfect place, that there are irregularities in it. And, some theorists and cosmologists trace it back to when the theoretical creation from a singularity, when there wasn't any space. You see, it's all relative. When there's no space for something to theoretically occupy, then you can't really, there's nothing to compare it to in size. So you think of a singularity as something as small than the head of a pin where all matter was created, but when there's no space for it to really occupy,
or matter to create from, or energy,
as it expands, it creates space, and as space condenses, it creates matter. It
gets very difficult to understand.
Yeah, it does. as Einstein once said, God doesn't play dice with the universe, but then he retracted that, and God sometimes does play dice with the universe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Alan, and I appreciate your call.
Thank you.
And the reason I let Alan go on so much is because I know that he has a good mind, and that he would at least give us some scientific or some currently accepted theories upon which to base some of this discussion. Understand, though, that when they say that in the beginning there was dust that came together and started spinning and all of a sudden exploded, it's like you said, where'd the dust come from? How did it get together? What brought it there? If there was no dust, and if there was no space, and if there was no matter, and if there was no energy, if in the beginning there was nothing, what happened? Good evening, you're on the air. Oh, chicken plucker. That's what we call a chicken plucker around here. That's somebody who had the impetus to call, but not the courage to speak. 520-333-4578. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, Bill. This is Frank from Pennsylvania.
Hi, Frank. You got to talk a lot louder.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay. I was just sitting here listening. I just tuned in not too long ago. I hear you talking about this debate.
Mm-hmm.
About the debate?
Yes.
Okay, I just tuned in.
Okay.
And I had a sort of a rebuttal against or towards your last caller.
Okay, not against. We're not adversaries here. We're all trying to provoke thought and sort of, at least try to look for the truth even if we don't find it.
He has some very good points. With his basing it on evolution with a Big Bang. But I'm going to sit here and throw something at you. What about the second law of thermodynamics?
What about? Why don't you tell us what that is?
Okay, the second law of thermodynamics is that everything is in a state of decay. And if he was saying, I know he was saying about there are anomalies and such that have been discovered, in the Earth's rotation and all this, and the different things within the universe that they have found. I think this is my belief. I believe that if that is possible, that if they feel that things are not as perfect as as they say it should be, that perhaps the second law of thermodynamics has something to do with that, being that everything is in a state of decay.
It may have a lot to do with it. If you can project that out into things that are happening, that are observable,
right,
and show that to us, then maybe we can see what you're talking about. What you're saying is things tend toward chaos, not toward order.
Well, what I'm saying is I believe it. I'm putting my opinion upon the basis of my belief in Jesus Christ and the creation.
Yeah, but tonight we're basing this argument upon fact.
Upon fact, right?
Yeah, no matter which side you take, you should be able to prove it in fact, because if you take the creationist side, you're not without fact. If God created the laws of the universe should support creationism, shouldn't they?
True.
Bet you never thought of that, did you? You see, a lot of Christians start off with a handicap. They don't believe their own bullshit. Know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Okay. If you believe it, you can find the facts to support it.
Right, but even from a scientific standpoint, the second law of thermodynamics, you hear the evolutionists say they have scientific facts to back up their theory of evolution. But they are contradicting themselves when they say that, for the simple fact that the second law of thermodynamics has been proven that everything is in a state of decay. When you build a house,
so how does that prove creationism and tend to disprove
creationism? I'm saying, what I'm saying is that it doesn't give very much clout to evolution.
How? Explain that.
Well,
explain what you mean by that.
Well, what I mean is...
See, I know exactly what you mean, but you need to be able to explain it.
Okay, well...
So give it a good shot. I'm here to help you. I'm not trying to put you down or anything.
No, I understand.
I'm trying to get you to explain your argument, or else people out there will say you don't have one.
Right. Well, I don't know how to explain it, but all I know...
Let me give you a clue. If everything tends towards decay, or if everything tends from order toward chaos, how did we get from an amoeba to a human being? Does that make sense?
Right.
How come you can't say that?
Well, I mean that's true. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that I see they try to say about the like evolution, like the pepper moth, for instance. Like Darwin used the pepper moth as one of his bases for evolution over in Europe, where there were factories that were spewing soot and different types of particles into the air, and there was black moths and white moths, and they disappeared, and eventually they came up with this pepper moth, which they say was based upon evolution. It was a product of evolution, but in reality, it was just a species that was mutated. It mutated itself to be able to exist within that environment.
But you just made a point for evolution, because the whole theory of evolution is based upon the fact that organisms mutate into something else depending upon their need to survive in their environment.
They mutated, but it is not a higher grade species. A mutation cannot be something that has jumped up the ladder in intelligence and in superiority just because of an appearance.
But wouldn't it be superior in survivability?
Well, I suppose, yeah.
So that's a step forward, isn't it?
It will be, yeah.
Now, bear in mind, I'm not arguing either point. I'm trying to clarify what you're saying.
I'm not arguing either point either. I'm just trying to understand some things too. That's how I figure. I was just thinking about the second law of thermodynamics. I was like, well,
it's an excellent argument. It's just that you're not putting forth your argument very well.
Yeah.
It is an excellent argument. If I were participating in this debate, I could take the second law of thermodynamics and almost destroy the theory of evolution.
Right. Well, see, I'm like I said, I'm no scientist. I'm just an average, ordinary person, to go to work and stuff like that. I read a lot. Don't sit here and argue a point.
Yeah, don't degrade yourself. You can do that. You have the same brain as anybody else, and I think that you can do anything that you want to do.
My thing is law. I study law. That's what I do, and that's my expertise as of today, as of this time, until something else better comes up, I guess. But,
okay. Well, you made a good point, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Bye.
520-333-4578. It's time for you. Yes, I'm pointing to you right through this microphone, right through the airwaves, actually through the phone lines, all the way to WBCQ in Maine, and then out all over the world to you. Good evening. You're on the air. Hello? Another chicken plucker. 520-333-4578. Don't be a chicken plucker. I'm not going to scalp you. I'm not going to reach out there and smack you upside the head. Either you have an argument to put forth or you don't. You're amongst friends. We're trying to explore a subject here. Good evening. You're on the air.
This is Chicken Plucker the First.
Chicken Plucker the First.
Yeah, I had to go and get the door.
Oh, okay. So you weren't a chicken plucker. You really had a legitimate excuse.
Well, you're just merely being provocative earlier, that's all.
Well, I have to be provocative. That's what radio is all about. If it's not provocative, you wouldn't be listening.
First, I'd like to get rid of a lot of the mysticism that comes out of both the theological and scientific camps, and just go ahead and say, why can't you accept what you see with your eyes and you can feel with your hands, and with the tools you've invented?
Wait a minute. You're not debating me, so don't make it against me.
Well, this is to everybody else. I'm addressing to the radio audience.
Okay, then tell it to the radio audience.
Okay, to the radio audience, defined as, why can't you?
Now you're going to have to...
It would seem as though science is doing like in the Middle Ages of discussing how many fairies can dance on the head of a pin, they're not only theories, they're quarks and these abstract things that only exist in a tool called mathematics. If it's creationism, then you have a system where you have a superimposed life by an authority, whether it be from an organized church or a shaman. I can't see either end of it. I'm lost. I don't know what you drive. I don't know what the audience is driving at.
Well, what we're trying to do is explore. We're not driving anything. We're trying to provoke thought so that if the audience as a whole doesn't reach an answer tonight, maybe some of the individuals out there will.
Okay, then if your mythology says one thing, accept it. If your science... No. Because I can have any kind of mythology. I can invent a mythology today, and it doesn't apply to anything. It would have to be based on the hero myth. There would have to be a man overcoming...
No. You're going off in flights of fancy. Tonight's debate
That's exactly what the argument between creationism...
No, it's not. You can either support it with facts or you can't. If you can't, you don't have a leg to stand on. There are people who profess that the theory that evolution is fact. If it's fact, then they should be able to prove it. There are other people who profess that creationism is fact. If it's fact, and if the entire laws of the universe were created by God as they say, they should be able to prove it with the scientific laws that God put in place that we can observe all around us. If they can't, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Both sides would have to use frippery in order to come across with a legitimate...
Well, I don't care. What I'm trying to do tonight is to get people to call who support one side or the other and present the facts to support their argument. Now we'll find out if all they can use is flippery or whatever you want to call it. So far, there's been a couple of good arguments here tonight.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling.
Well, thank you, Bill.
You're welcome. 520-333-4578. Folks, if you're lost, I can't help you. The purpose of tonight's broadcast is try to get at some facts so that maybe we won't be lost. And, maybe we're all lost. Maybe we're all full of crap. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Bill.
Hi.
I'd like to lead off by saying you're the guy that got me convinced I should do shortwave radio about 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, good. Thank you.
Anyway, I'm a creation believer, and I've done a little investigating, and in Glen Rose, Texas, they have fossils of footprints, human, right alongside and right within dinosaur prints, and I think that's pretty conclusive that they existed at the same time.
Or, in some instances, outright criminal con jobs perpetrated by people who wanted to make money off of it.
And another thing I can think of offhand is the amount of dust that scientists have supposedly proven scientifically that should accumulate on our moon was just proven when they went there and found less.
I'm sorry, my friend, but I can pretty well conclusively prove that they never went there, at least in the Apollo space program.
At least in that, yeah. But, I mean, if
and that's what you're basing that on.
prove their own previous facts.
Yeah, Neil Armstrong's full of crap.
Yeah. And there's just so many things they've found.
Yeah, they were expecting him to sink up over his head in dust, and when he jumped off the proverbial ladder after saying his historic thing, the next thing he said was, "It's solid."
Yeah, what was it, a quarter inch of dust or something?
About 3/4 inch. They claimed.
But and another thing, it's hard to think of everything, but one other thing that I've found is that they're finding sea fossils of living creatures from the oceans in places and mountains all around the world, everywhere. Northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, mountains, next to the beach, as far inland as you can get. Now, but we could say that it's theory that there was a great flood, but there had been something to bring all those creatures over all the square footage we have on this planet, so it's pretty good evidence that there must have been a catastrophic flood or something of that sort. to create that situation where we find them today.
Well, as far as I can determine, there's no scientific evidence that there was a flood everywhere in the earth at the same time. There is scientific evidence that different parts of the earth were underwater at different times in history, unless they're just totally off on all of their ability to determine the age of certain events.
Right. But these fossils are found everywhere. That's a scientific fact.
Well, that's true.
How they got there, it wasn't through evolution. It had to have been a catastrophic event of some sort. And those footprints we were talking about, I think Carl E. Boggs is the head of that.
Well, that doesn't destroy the theory of evolution. It just destroys their time frame.
Yeah, right. But true, that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of evidence that just totally destroys their, what do they call it, evolution column or whatever it is. And people want to see a lot of evidence of disproving their timetables and whatnot. That creation evidence museum in Glen Rose, Texas has got quite a bit of evidence.
Okay.
Supposedly have a fossilized finger that has been cut off and scientifically checked out, and it's a layer of earth that is along the dinosaur trail that they've uncovered the footprints in. And that's more proof of human beings as we are, not as Neanderthals.
Okay, thank you for your call.
You're welcome. Bye.
520-333-4578. And folks, in my comments about the moon, I was not trying to enter into the debate. What I was trying to do is tell him that his argument about the dust on the moon does not support either side and doesn't hurt either side, because if he's using what they say from the Apollo space program, it didn't happen. Good evening, you're on the air. And that's another argument, by the way.
Hello, Bill.
Hello.
Well, I'm no scientist, but
I'm not either. Welcome to the club. Neither is Alan.
when I look at our solar system, it's quite amazing to me that the Earth just happens to fall at a place where it's relatively, we can survive as a physical world as we understand it.
But was it always that way?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I do recall reading that if our axis was even different, things could be terribly different.
Our axis couldn't be different.
Yeah.
It can't be different. Once it starts spinning, it becomes a gyroscope. All this nonsense that the Earth flipped on its axis so many millions of years ago or thousands of years ago, that's complete, total, utter bullshit. Could never have happened, and it's not going to flip on its axis today. Any object spinning in space, orbiting around another object, is in fact a gyroscope. Can't happen.
That makes sense to me. And I live up here where we have about a 6-month winter, and it seems to me that part of that is just rest. Now, I know you're in a desert condition, and you'd have totally different.
No. Your concept of Arizona is really way off.
Oh.
I live up in the most beautiful mountains you've ever seen in your life.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
At 7,500 feet, and we can set out to find a cactus, but I haven't found any yet, not around here.
Really?
Really.
We always just assume everything's...
Beautiful pine trees and oaks and aspens and willows, and just, it's beautiful. Great herds of elk and antelope and skunks and everything else.
All right. Well, I guess my point is, it seems to me that, we at least if I'm going to believe what I've seen from NASA, Venus is just it's terrible. It's like molten lava and things, and I'm sure Mercury would even be worse. Mars seems to be too cold, really, to sustain humans.
So you're saying, but that's not scientific evidence for creationism or evolution. It's just merely your belief that, hey, it's kind of funny that we're right here where it would support life, and I kind of believe that supports creationism, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
But that's based upon belief, not science.
Well, yeah, of course, that is belief, isn't it?
Yeah. We need science. You got to support your argument with science during this debate.
Well, that's all I'd Thank you for...
That's okay. Thank you for calling.
Okay, nice.
520-333-4578 is the number. Remember, folks, we need facts. We need science. I'm amazed that nobody's picked up on that second. Well, I'm not going to give it away because that's really got a lot to do with it. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Bill. Steve calling. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
That's great. It's a great show. I don't want to really debate. It's a debate, right, you said?
Yeah. What side are you on?
Okay, whose side am I on?
No, not whose side are you on. What side are you going to take and support with scientific fact?
Well, actually, I'm not going to really take a side. I'm going to throw a question out there if I could, if that's possible.
What's the question?
The question mainly is aimed towards the people who are strict creationists. Just going to the Bible, which I know isn't scientific fact. But my question...
Sorry, I laid the groundwork at the beginning of the broadcast, folks. No tangents. You got to come in. You need to take a side, and you need to support your side with scientific fact. Okay? You got to do that. That's what this is all about. And if you can't, if you have a side, for instance, if you support evolution, and you cannot promote any scientific fact to back up what you support, then you're no better than the people who believe in creationism simply because it says so in the Bible. And if you believe in creationism, and if God created the universe and all of the laws of physics in it, if you can't use God's own laws to support your position, you don't have a position. You're full of crap. Good evening. You're on the air.
Good evening. Been listening to your show. Real interesting. A couple of points here I'd like to make.
Okay.
The one caller before me with the dust on the moon, that's a good one, but what that proves is a shortness of time. It doesn't prove evolution, or it just proves that the universe hasn't been around for 10 billion years. Pick a number. Also, the amount of salt in the ocean is a likewise proof for the shortness of the amount of time. These are scientific facts. You can determine how much salt is leached into the ocean on a yearly basis. If the Earth was, pick another number, 12 billion years old, it would have a lot more salt in it. Thus, by those two facts, you can determine that the age of 10 million or 20 million years or billion years is not scientifically credible. Thus, you'd have to determine how many steps of evolution it would take to get, say, from an amoeba to a man. Let's say 10 million steps. And 10 million steps of evolution in 6,000 years, we should be seeing people evolving left and right. Every month somebody should evolve into something different. Now that is just a man, but with how many species there are on the planet, say 250,000 species, I think that's a fairly accurate number, we should be seeing lots of evolution here and there in all these species. Being there's just millions, had to be millions and millions and millions, but there has never been a scientifically accredited example of evolution. It's always been de-evolution with the fruit flies with the crinkly wings and that sort of thing. It's never been something better. So that's one point.
Okay, but that's
the point being
what you're arguing is the second law of thermodynamics that you picked up on it. That's
okay. So that's that one. There's another fact is there's something called irreducible simplicity, and something can become simpler and simpler until it just serves no function anymore. The easy way to point to this out is a mousetrap. You can't really take any parts of it away where it would serve any purpose at all. Likewise, say for instance, a woodpecker with its incredible tongue that goes all the way around to the back of its head. How something like this would evolve. Or the fellow that before that talked about the eye. How the eye would evolve.
Yeah, but you started off with good scientific fact, and now you're getting away from it.
Okay, well, I was talking about the irreducible simplicity. When you look at, back in Darwin's day, they used to think that a single cell was kind of like a blob, kind of like jelly. Now that they've looked at these things with super microscopes and such, they know that they're so incredibly complex inside there that where did it go before it was a single cell? It's just an incredible, it can't be reduced any farther before it is a non-functional entity. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay, one more thing, or maybe two more. The amount of nickel that's in the Earth's surface. it's a scientifically measurable event that you can see how many meteorites are hitting the Earth. Here and there, they come in, they can be measured. If the Earth has been around for 5 billion years, it should be pretty much covered with nickel. It's not. There's just not enough nickel to support the amount of time and the amount of meteorites that should have been hitting the Earth. And in fact, we're going back to there's just not enough time for all this millions and billions of events of evolution to take place. Another one is there are no transitional fossils, no transitional forms between any of the species.
Mm-hmm.
There's no half reptile, half amphibian, half fish, half reptile.
Yeah, no mermaids have ever been really
Where
found.
you hear about the cows that walked into the ocean and became whales, their blowholes or their noses gradually moved.
Actually, evolution supports the opposite. They say that all life started in the ocean and walked up on the land, is what they say.
Well, yeah, but you may say that, but there's a lot of talk about they say fossils. They look at some fossils and skeletons of whales, and they say, look, here's a little bit less of a hip here.
Well, the pectoral fins of whales not only have joints like in an arm, but finger bones.
And so some of that stuff is kind of real hard to believe. And another one of my favorites is you've got the comets that have been whipping around let's get back to the other guy that was talking about the dot exploding, thing. And he's saying, okay, this thing's spinning around, throwing off stuff. Why is it not all going in the same direction? Well, he says, it didn't all blow off at once. It kind of changed direction. It blew off in different directions. You can almost buy that until you look at our solar system, which has objects that are rotating in different directions. And on such a small universe size-wise, a small thing as our solar system, why would there be different directions? The size of
according to the laws of physics, there shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, right. Now, if you think, all of these planets kind of compressed from something.
Now, let me say that according to the laws of physics as we know them, because we could be wrong. We find out that our science is wrong all the time.
Well, science is supposed to be things that you observe, not things that maybe this is different. I mean, I start to hear stories about, I think there's a comet factory somewhere that's spitting out these comets, and that's why these comets can still be here after 12 billion years, even though they're zipping around the sun and their tails are getting eaten up every time they make an orbit. There's still plenty of comets around. And you got the Jupiter and the sun are being giant vacuum cleaners. The solar system should be clean as a pin, but it's still plenty of junk floating around in it, which doesn't indicate to me it's been there for 12 million years. But that's about all I've got to say. I just had to get those points in.
Okay. Besides that, you got a phone call.
Thank you.
Good night. And thank you for calling. He started off on a roll and disintegrated. Why he didn't stick to his original argument, I don't know. There's got to be somebody out there who can pick up on some of these real scientific points that you can just devastate both sides with, really. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, Bill. How are you tonight?
Good.
Well, I definitely believe in creation for several reasons.
Go for it. Don't wait for me.
Okay. Well, one of them is, besides the things like the salt in the ocean and the second law of thermodynamics, is things like the mere complexity of life and the DNA, that's in the...
Now, how can you prove that devastates the other side with scientific fact?
Well,
See, that's just a personal belief that it couldn't happen because it's so complicated.
Okay, that's a good point. Although I don't know the figures off the top of my head, I have heard people explain it and say that even the most simplest life forms, like protozoa, etc., that the odds of the DNA in them, which make up the program which determines the life form and what it does, is the odds of that happening by chance would be like 1 in 10 to the 40th power. And that's something statistically that's virtually impossible. Okay, that's one thing. There's a lot of other things like the dust on the moon. Of course, I tend to agree with you that that may not necessarily mean something.
Yeah. Well, it might mean something if they really went there.
Right.
I can pretty conclusively prove that in the Apollo space program, they never stepped foot on the moon. They never left an Earth orbit if they went anywhere. I need you to speak up a lot louder if you can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did hear that broadcast that night that you were talking about.
Oh, I've made a bunch of broadcasts on that subject, but that's another subject. Let's stick to this one.
But maybe it's the basis of it. I wish I'd have known about this beforehand. I would have got some of the actual technical figures and references out. But one thing that always got me initially interested in the subject and the debate between creation and evolution was the mere fact that if you think about the universe, okay, whether it was imperfect or it was formed with an irregular bang or whatever, that the universe is made of something. It's made of mass, it's made of particles, and those are real things. And they have to take up real space somewhere. You know, the universe isn't the lack of space, or it isn't a bunch of nothingness. It is actually something that takes up volume that has to be located somewhere. And that somewhere, you know, has to be a step outside and above what we see. And you know, that's something that almost makes you think that, you know, and even scientifically, there may not be a law for me to quote that would classify that in some way, but the fact is, it has to take up volume somewhere, and something has to be beyond that is much greater.
Well, you're very close to something that's very relevant. According to scientists, space is not nothing. Space is something that can be bent, that can be warped, that can be all kinds of things.
Exactly, and I know when I was a young kid, my friends and I started talking about that, and that was one of the things that it first made us wonder, you know, who is it, or what is it, or what are we? And we are something. We aren't an imagination like, you know, some people would believe. This is all just in someone's head. We are real. We are made of something, and we have to be somewhere. And you can extend that clear out.
You mean you're not a creation of my conscious mind?
No, I can't be.
You mean the universe doesn't revolve around me? I'm not dreaming in my bed and created. I haven't created all of this?
No, because if it was just in your head, Bill, then one of the days that you maybe were having a bad day, you would step off your bed and fall into nothing.
Yeah, I'd make it better than what it is, I got to tell you right now.
Right. The floor in your house has nothing to do with your faith in it. It's there until it rots.
Yeah.
In other words, but those are some of the things, and hopefully in the future, if you do this again, I'll try to get some of the exact facts. I've heard them put eloquently by people of science, my field, electronics, so I don't memorize these type of things. But it's been a really wonderful show, and that's pretty much all I think I can add to it.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your call. 520-333-4578. Don't call for a couple of minutes because I've got to go get some water, and I'm going to play some music. I will be back right after this, and then we'll get back on the phone.
When evening chores are over at our ranch house on the plains, and all I've got to do is lay around, I saddle up my pony and I ride off down the trail to watch the desert sun go down. Riding down the canyon to watch the sun go down, a picture that no artist e'er could paint. White-faced cattle lowing on the mountainside, I hear a coyote whining for its mate. Cactus plants are blooming, sagebrush everywhere, granite spires are standing all around. I tell you folks, it's heaven to be riding down the trail when the desert sun goes down. Cactus plants are blooming, sagebrush everywhere, granite spires fires are standing all around. I tell you folks, it's heaven to be riding down the trail when the desert sun goes down.
Okay, I'm back. And good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Mr. Cooper. It's Marshall in Houston.
Hello, Marshall.
How you doing?
Good.
Well, I'm glad I kind of set that little spark the other night for the show that you did yesterday evening. I recorded it, but I had talked to a couple of people and asked them to listen to it. In fact, I got feedback from about 6 people that listened to it, and almost every one of them thinks that you ought to be crucified.
Why? Because I asked them who was telling the truth?
Yeah, you turned all of their malarkey upside down.
Well, then maybe that's where it ought to be. All I did was read what Jesus said and ask the audience, did Jesus tell the truth, or is your preacher telling the truth? That's all I did.
It really picks them up. But anyway, on the evolutionary thing, the problem with evolution is that, according to the laws of physics, your protons and your neutrons have specific weights. And those are electrical charges that can only be manipulated in a certain way. And in carbon life forms, that even becomes more specific. And if we just follow the laws of statistical statistics, the probabilities of evolution are impossible. We're talking like trillions and trillions to one of even the remotest possibility of anything arriving out of this chance configuration. And, we see the whole reason why they postulate and have been selling this garbage to the public of evolution is because it is the basis for humanism. And, it puts you in the mode that you're just a fluke of the universe, and it also takes away your relationship with the Creator and also accountability.
Yeah, but now you're getting away from scientific fact and back into the realm of belief. We want to stick with science.
Well,
let me ask you this, because you're onto something there. If back in the early days of the Earth, when there was no life of any kind, there was some kind of a primordial soup brewing in some volcano somewhere, and lightning hit, and just the right molecules happened to be there that received a burst of energy from this lightning strike, and a one-celled animal was created, for instance. If that could actually happen, let me ask you this. I'm not taking either side. I just want to ask you this and see what you've got to say about it.
Yes.
What would happen if lightning struck a sewage plant today?
Well, it might stop working.
Might stop working, but if that's the basis of the evolutionists' proposition of the way that life began on this earth, there is no better primordial soup brewing anywhere than all of the biological material that you can find in a sewer plant.
Well, the problem with that argument is that the sewer plant was created by the affluent, the waste products of human beings. And there's already living organisms, from the gut and everything else that are swimming around in this sewer.
So how come something new hasn't swum out of that?
Exactly.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How come? If it could happen in the primordial soup of the dim history of this planet, how come it hasn't happened in the sewers of the cities of the world today?
Because
or some garbage.
I guess the laws of physics dictate that chaos can never take precedence in the structure of things, because there are constant laws that are manipulating the universe.
Oh, but that's not true. Scientifically, the second law of thermodynamics is a fact. Everything tends toward decay or from order toward chaos. That's just a fact.
Yeah. I'm not real up on that one. But I understand just from my own.
It's one of the very best arguments against evolution that there is. It's not the only argument, and it's not devastating, but it really, holds a lot of water. And
It's no accident that we're floating through space, and we have our distance from the sun is very well calculated. We have a moon.
But according to the Big Bang Theory, it is absolutely an accident.
But it's no accident, is what I said.
Well, it's no accident if creationism is a fact, but you're not putting forward any scientific fact to back it up.
Yeah.
And if you're going to take a side, either one of these sides, and you can't back it up with scientific fact, you have to sit down and ask yourself, why do I believe this?
Right. There's a book that I got, and I haven't finished reading it, and it's called In the Beginning, and there's a gentleman who wrote the book. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he gathers the knowledge of a lot of mathematicians and physicists and biologists, and a lot of these people have bought into the evolutionary concept, and even guys in the quantum physics had bought into it. And as they got deeper and deeper into their study of these atomic structures, they realized that the possibilities of evolution were impossible, and primarily because of the aspects of quantum physics starts telling you that all of these parts are indivisible. There's no end to them.
You know what amazes me is when people like Stephen Hawking, who all his life has denied the existence of God based upon what he knows about science, all of a sudden starts telling us that there might be a God after all. You know what I mean?
See, Stephen Hawking has gotten his book contracts, and he's gotten his tenure at the college, and he's prostituted himself like all the other so-called priests of science today that work in the universities, because that's been the general agenda out there.
Oh, I don't think so. Not when you're talking about Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking has gone against the established beliefs of science so many times in his life that he has actually risked being ridiculed and expelled. And he has changed his mind several times on some of the things that he himself has come up with. I think he's a very honest person who's really trying, honestly, to find the truth.
Yeah, I don't know about Mr. Hawkins, and I apologize for making that statement about him, but I think from the majority of the men that I've been acquainted with, and women, in the professions of the sciences, they prostitute themselves for their mortgages, their tenure, their retirement, and they will some of them and off the record will say, man, I really don't believe all this garbage, but this is how I have to make a living.
You're absolutely correct, and the reason for that is a system has been set up in the scientific community whereby if you do not toe the mark, and if you don't toe the mark, if you don't say the accepted things, if you refrain from making waves, then you're okay. But if you deviate from what is accepted, then you don't get any grants anymore. And the whole scientific community depends upon grants.
Right.
From states, from governments, from foundations, from all of these different organizations and things and governments. And so if they step out of line, then they find that their grants get disapproved, their tenure is no longer there for them, and they fall into disrepute, and then they can't make a decent living anymore.
Right.
So that's how they're controlled.
Yeah, that's why we are in the shape we are today.
Yeah, and if they all had the guts to stand up and say, this is crap, this is what's really true, then the system would have to support them, because the system would have no more scientists working on their side.
Yeah, when I look at the Earth and I see this what they claim to be the source of evolution, these fossils and stuff like that, it's quite evident to me, and this is my opinion, that the Earth has been used many different times and possibly been put together from other portions.
Now you're getting off into the realm of out of fact, and as moderator, I've got to draw you back in.
I just wanted to throw that in.
You've got to submit fact or allow somebody else to come on and talk.
Yeah, the guys in quantum physics, from what I'm starting to get from these guys, is that they are finding that the atom is indivisible, and that comes back to this question of, the circle and pi. Pi is indivisible, and some people see that as the image of God, his indivisibility. He is infinite, and this infinite aspect is what makes the concept of evolution impossible. And it can actually be supported, not actually, but is supported by, quantum physics, and even from the standpoint of genetic biology studies, they are coming to a lot of conclusions that, hey, how can this stuff have gotten to this point?
Well, maybe that's why so many scientists now are reversing themselves and saying, all my life, based upon all the science that I know, I didn't believe in God, and now I'm starting to think that maybe there is one.
Yeah.
But, that's neither here nor there. Thanks for your call.
Sure.
Appreciate it. 520-333-4578 is the number. Why don't you jump in here and put your 2 cents in, or your 5 cents, or your 10 cents. Or, you could even have a deficit if you want to. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening. I remember you talking about your incredulity at the Tao and its sharp rise since the fallback.
What's this got to do with evolution or creationism?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just caught it. I just started on it.
Buenas noches, senor. We put out the parameters of tonight's broadcast in the beginning. I have stated it several times again during the broadcast. The subject is a debate amongst the members of the audience, creationism versus evolution, and that's what you got to stay on. Please don't take it personally that I cut you off the air. That's what I said I would do to anybody who tried to go off on any other tangent. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yes, Bill.
Yes, sir.
David in Georgia.
Hi, David.
I wanted to, anytime I think you enter into a debate, you have to ask maybe one ground rule. What would you say your definition of fact is?
A fact is something that can be at least accepted as being true by most people in the world.
Right. And I would agree with that. Of course, Webster's 1828 basically says the same thing. Facts are witnesses that are introduced to the credulity of an event.
Yes.
And I guess from my side of that, I would debate from the point of creationism, and that it gets kind of simple for me. I'm not a real intellectual thinker, so I just got to get down to being done with the rock thinking from there. But if a fact is based on witnesses, then my witness would be that there's only been one man that walked on the earth, that there were witnesses that were willing to die for the fact that he supported creationism, and of course that would be Jesus Christ.
Okay, but where is the basis of our ground rules of debate tonight are that you must introduce scientific facts.
Right, and the fact is that I have these witnesses that are credible to the point of giving their life, as other people have been giving them the credibility.
I'm sorry, but your attempt to introduce religious belief into the debate won't work, because that's what it is. It's not fact. It's religious belief. You believe that because you have chosen to believe it, but it does not support either side of the debate, either evolution or creationism.
All right, what about this perspective? You've been talking of the scientists and their testimony and their witness of fact.
No, excuse me. Excuse me. If you believe in creationism, who created the universe?
Who created the earth?
Who created the whole universe? If you believe in creationism, who created the universe?
Yes, the one true God.
Who created the laws of physics?
The one true God.
Then if the one true God created the universe and created the laws of physics, why can't you support your argument with the laws of physics?
Because I can't prove what you tell me the laws of physics are any more than I can prove based on the witnesses that I'm calling for.
There are certain...
You're calling forth a witness of scientists.
No, I'm calling...
Theories.
No. Science is based upon the observation of how things interact together in the universe, based upon the laws that God put into place that makes the planet orbit around the sun, that makes us stay on the earth instead of spinning out into space because of centrifugal force and all of these other things. If you profess that God created the universe and God created the laws of physics, yet you cannot put forth one physical law to support your argument, then your whole religious belief is based upon nothing.
No, I disagree. I understand what you're saying. I'm I haven't intellectually studied the subject to support it. And the basis for that is that I cannot prove much of the theory of science any more than I can prove the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Oh, but if God
All
created...
I can base that on is the same thing that most intellectual thinkers, everybody that's quoting tonight, is quoting the witness of other men in their theories of science.
No, it's not the witness of other men. I can prove that gravity exists. I can prove centrifugal force. I can prove that the planets orbit around the sun, even though if there were no gravity coming from the sun to keep them in this orbit, they would spin out into space instead of continually circle. You see, I can do all this from my own observation. I don't need the witness of anybody else to tell me that. And when I study science, what I did as a child is I started out with certain premises or hypotheses and built upon those where I could see that they work or they don't work. And then I reach a point where if it's not my specialty, then I either have to depend upon the witness or testimony of other people, or I have to make it a specialty. But the basic laws of physics can be understood and observed by all people. My argument is this, as the moderator. If you believe in either side of this argument, and you can't put forth any scientific acceptable facts that would be accepted by most people, your belief is based upon nothing but simple faith. And that can't be argued, my friend.
Okay, I agree with that premise. But,
and there's nothing wrong with faith. It's your religion, that's fine, but you can't argue it to other people. It's something that exists only and solely within you.
Okay, and I guess maybe my clarification there would be, again, to get back to the central point of fact, and that is much of the discussion and debate tonight has been based on what is supposed to be fact, but it is in fact just a witness of other men. You see my point?
Well, I understand your point. Maybe you don't see some of these facts that are being put forth. I can see most of them. And it's not from witness of other men. It's from my own observation and study of science. I can see it. I can feel it. I know that it's true.
Someone that was proposing the fault progression.
Yeah, it's true.
Again, that's just a witness of other men.
No, that's not the witness of other men. It is absolute fact that rain falling upon land will dissolve the salts in the earth and run into the ocean, and the salt content of the ocean does increase every single year by a certain amount.
But we can't take other variables and set a definitive point on the other variables that can change.
The other variables, compared with all the rain falling on the earth and running out of the rivers into the ocean, are minute. Not relevant.
At this time in history.
Well, we're getting off here. Let's
again, my most important point is for people that really can get drawn in to the discussion of the intellectual, and I understand your premise, but you get drawn into that so that then fact it becomes accepted because a majority has said it, and I think that's the danger we have to be on guard for. That's really what I want to inject in the debate.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your call.
Thank you.
520-333-4578 is the number. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello, Bill.
Hello.
I just turned my radio down. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Bill, you can have your cake and eat it too.
Okay, show us how.
I had an aunt once.
And it's not my cake. I'm the moderator tonight. I have no side in this debate.
I think your premise is flawed.
Which
There's no debate.
Wait a minute. I don't have any premise. I've opened the phones so that the listening audience can debate.
If you go to St. Paul's Cathedral in London, which was built by Christopher Wren.
Wait a minute. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's stick to the ground rules. Which side of this debate do you support?
I'm on both.
You can't be on both. Good night. It's absolutely impossible to be on both. You either support evolution or you support creationism, or you don't support either one, but you cannot support both. And if you try to call me and bullshit me, you're standing in a deep hole with a lot of water in it. Won't work. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Mr. Cooper. This is Chris from Wisconsin.
Hi, Chris. Can you put the phone in front of your mouth and talk a lot louder, please?
Sure.
That's much better.
Okay, good. Something that I'm for creationism, by the way.
Okay.
And something I thought of that was basic is chromosomes
Okay.
in male and female.
Okay.
They both have different chromosomes. And God said that He made male and female. He made male and female, made He them in the scriptures.
Yeah.
So to me that was basic. I'm not a scientist or anything, but
Well, that's a good point. I mean, if evolution is true, how do we get two of the same species of different sex? I mean, how does that happen? And that's the question you're asking. Is that correct?
well, I'm just saying that science basically proves that they done studies where they can separate the chromosomes, right?
Yes, they can.
And they found out that males have certain chromosomes and females do.
Yes, but they're still the same species of what they call in science an animal.
Right.
How does that happen?
Oh, boy.
How do we evolve different creatures of the same species of different sex? That's a really interesting question. I can understand how an amoeba can be both sexes and divide itself and reproduce and all that kind of stuff, but how one species evolves into two different creatures of opposite sexes is just absolutely wild.
Amen.
That's wild. That is way beyond my understanding.
Mine too.
And I've asked some very prominent scientists to explain that to me over the years, and guess what?
They couldn't.
They haven't a clue. They don't have a clue. Because you see, both of the different sexes, somewhere, it had to split from the species into two sexes, and then the two different sexes had to evolve independently from that point on.
Right.
Now, this isn't something I've made up. Some of the greatest minds in the world have told me that quietly on the side with the promise that I would never reveal their name. So I can't do that because I always protect my sources. But that is extremely interesting. You brought up a very good point.
Well, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you very much.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, call.
Bye-bye.
520-333-4578 is the number. We got time for 2, 3, maybe 4 more calls. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, Bill.
Hello.
Hi. I'm listening to you up here in Michigan. Good show.
Thank you.
Come down on the side of the evolutionists, no?
Okay.
Mainly, where do you start? Biology.
You know, it just occurred to me that if Bart Bell's listening to this show, he's probably eating his heart out, wishing that he thought of this subject to begin with.
Yeah, probably. Well, he can always copy it. Biology. I mean, we're so close to the other primates, our closest living relatives. How do you explain?
Well, first place, what do you mean by close?
Our DNA, the similarity. We're like 98% with a chimpanzee, 98% compatible.
Are we really?
Yes.
What about the compatibility with a pig?
We're not as compatible. We have some compatibility. We're both mammals.
From what I understand, now I could be wrong, but I have read some papers that say that we're closer to a pig than we are to a chimpanzee.
If you're going by the paper that was written by Dr. Dwayne Gish from the Institute of Creation Research here it's faulty data. That's another problem.
Well, I don't really remember which paper it was, but I remember reading this paper in a very prominent scientific journal, which I will not name.
Okay.
But
we might be 60% with a pig.
okay.
No, I don't have.
But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation. Go ahead.
Well, I was trying to get in earlier. Your phone was pretty busy. The second law of thermodynamics is a theoretical statement. It deals with closed systems. The Earth is not a closed system. The Earth gets its energy from the sun. Billions of kilowatts of energy a day. That's what drives plants. If you accept a creationist definition of a closed system, where nothing ever takes energy from the whole and momentarily develops, progresses, that would you wouldn't have thunderstorms, you wouldn't have whirlpools and eddies in a stream, you wouldn't have anything like that. They deal mostly. The Earth is not a static system.
But let me ask you this. I know where you're going with this, but you also understand that the sun is in a constant process of dying.
Yes.
And in fact, every year is shrinking in diameter.
The sun shrinks and expands on an 80-year cycle. It oscillates.
What do you mean shrinks and expands?
It oscillates. It's shrinking. It's roughly 80-year span. There's, let's see, the last time was from 76 to 80. It actually expanded slightly.
Expanded slightly, but doesn't make up the shrinking over all of these years.
Well,
also, the Earth is slowing down in its rotation.
Yes.
It's also deteriorating in its orbit. So the second law of thermodynamics, as far as I can see, now correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, please prove it to me, but the second law of thermodynamics is pretty much true for all things that can be observed in the universe. For instance, galaxies are shrinking.
As a whole, is a closed system, as far as we know.
No, I'm not talking about a closed system. No, the universe is not a closed system. We can look at galaxies and see that these galaxies are shrinking in upon themselves.
But they're all within the universe. What I'm saying is that the law of second law of thermodynamics eventually wins out, but here on Earth...
So it does.
Eventually, yes.
Have validity. See,
yes.
Okay.
But here
all I wanted to hear you say is it has some validity, because I know that it does, and your original premise was that it does not, and it does.
It has a closed system as it applies to the Earth. The Earth is not a closed system.
Well, when you say closed system, that sounds to me like you're talking about some experiment in a laboratory inside of a bell jar.
Yes,
nothing
is a theoretical statement
based upon what's observed in the universe.
Yes.
And on the Earth and everywhere else.
But what I'm saying is...
It's not from a closed system.
Now you lost me. The Earth is not a closed system.
No, it's not. And the second law of thermodynamics is not based upon a closed system.
I think if you looked up the definition, it would state that. But anyway.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Transitional fossils. There's plenty of transitional fossils.
Like what?
Archaeopteryx is a bird reptile. It came from dinosaur stock. That's where birds evolved from. It has reptilian features. It has avian features. It has teeth. It has a skull like a reptile. It has claws on its wings. It has an unfused long tail, plus feathers.
All birds, from my understanding, have claws on their wings.
Some do. There's a Hoatzin that lives in South America, has claws in its juvenile stage. No bird in its...
Now, I'm not talking about claws sticking out, but inside the wing, in the bone structure, there is what you could call a claw.
Oh, yeah, it's all fused together now, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not functional anymore like this was.
Well, how do we know that it ever was?
Because of the fossils that show it was before. These fossils, and then there's fossils now they're finding in China, which are even better, slightly older, of basically feathered dinosaurs that they couldn't fly. Their wings weren't, their feathers weren't asymmetrical, they were symmetrical. They were useless for flight but good for insulation. That's where feathers originally evolved from.
But according to science that I read, dinosaurs didn't need insulation because they lived in hot, humid climates.
Well, there's different theories about dinosaurs. Some claim they're warm-blooded.
Okay, now, don't get me wrong. I'm not being oppositional or antagonistic. What I'm trying to do is function as a moderator, and where I see something that needs to be explained, I'm trying to draw that out.
Okay.
But you know what? I wasn't watching the clock. We got to get out of here, like, right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll continue this on some other night.
Okay, great show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, folks. I wasn't watching the clock. We got to get out of here right now. Good night. God bless each and every single one of you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you Monday night.
At words poetic, I'm so pathetic that I always have found it best, instead of getting them off my chest, to let them rest unexpressed. I hate parading my serenading, for I'll probably miss the part. But if this ditty is not so pretty, at least it'll tell you how great you are. You're the top, you're Mahatma Gandhi, you're the top, you're Napoleon Brandy, you're the purple light of a summer night in Spain. You're the National Gallery, you're Gobbo salary, you're cellophane. You're sublime, you're a turkey dinner, you're the time of the Derby winner. I'm a toy balloon that's faded soon to pop. But a baby on the bottom, you're the top. You're the top, you're a Waldorf salad, you're the top, you're a Berlin ballad, you're the baby grand of a lady and a gent, you're an old Dutch master, you're Mrs. Astor, you're Pepsodent, you're romance, you're the steps of Russia, you're the pants on a Roxy Usher. I'm a lazy lout that's just about to stop. But a baby, I'm